Hello and welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino Verrelli, founder and CEO of Project Purple, and we have an exciting interview coming up with a very special guest after a few quick updates. Since 2010, we've contributed over $3 million and counting towards pancreatic cancer research, actually closing in on $4 million as we speak. We've also allocated over $1 million worth of aid to more than 1,500 patients and families through our patient aid program. Your monthly or one-time gift can improve patients' lives through research and assistance programs. You can donate now at projectpurple.org. Pancreatic cancer does not rest, and neither will we. Your support is truly appreciated. If you're looking to get involved in one of our events, whether that means joining a run team, participating in a virtual run walk, group fitness, golf, or anything else you can think of, visit projectpurple.org/events to learn more. And if you listen to podcasts, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to the Project Purple podcast. Some exciting news. We've just closed in on 125,000 listens or downloads. I don't know what they're called, but I know that's a lot of people tuning in. This podcast has now become the #1 podcast in the pancreatic cancer space. So thank you to, first of all of our guests for allowing us the opportunity to bring them on the podcast to share their journeys. And then to all the listeners out there for tuning in as we release these podcasts. I know we've been doing them now almost 7 years, which is pretty wild. It's been a really, really cool journey. I've been blessed to have so many people on the podcast. And with us today, coming to us, it's like 5 hours from where we are here in the studio. So it's a fairly decent amount of difference. Kelianne O'Shea from Cape May, New Jersey, a place that I know fairly well. Used to vacation there with my family. We've got a lot of runners from New Jersey. We've actually had quite a few runners. It's kind of wild, since we're on our 15th anniversary, Kelly, and we've. I mean, I always say like New York, the tri-state. I know people outside of this area go tri-state. What is that? Is that like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana? No. It's the tri-state, the original tri-state, which is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
Exactly.
But we've had a lot of runners, and a couple of them I think are down that way. I know there's two of them. As we were talking about, Cape May is, for those that don't know, is a very popular vacation spot in the summertime.
Super
Uh,
popular. I
Super
think,
popular.
ranked, whenever they put out, the best beach towns to visit or vacation at, I think Cape May is always, in the top 5.
Yeah, it's really a special place, especially as I mentioned before we hit record. We used to do that trip when our kids were young, and then we also did Wildwood Crest, which is just literally the town prior to getting to Cape May. And the beaches are great. Cape May is known for their ice cream. I think that whole southern Jersey, right? You've got the ice
Yeah.
cream, but Cape May as itself, that I don't know if they still do this. Do they still do the horse and buggy? Like there's like that horse and
Yep.
buggy that go around town, which is really cool. And they have those homes that are iconic there down by the water. Again, I haven't been there in a long time, but they're almost like I wouldn't say, would you say like I was gonna say gingerbread, but that's not, they're like classic Victorian homes that are just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, they're, the Victorian homes, and we have the horse and buggies, and you can also do trolley tours, and they take you
That's
around,
right.
and they give you, fun facts of all of the Victorian buildings and houses that you're seeing.
Yeah, great part of the country. So, if anyone is listening and looking for vacation spots, Cape May is a great place to go. Kellyanne, we could probably talk a lot about Cape May and everything, but I know you're here to join us here on the podcast to share your journey and talk a little bit about what you've been going through. So, as we were getting to know each other before we hit record, this is your opportunity to kind of share with our audience. I'm going to hand this off to you in a second about your background and how you got to the podcast, really, and to us here at Project Purple. So, with that, the microphone is yours. And as I said, you can stay as high level as you want, or you can get into the weeds, and I'll be taking some notes here.
Okay. Um, so I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer last June. So I just celebrated a year of, I call it, surviving pancreatic cancer, which I was very excited about. Um, I am only 28 years old, or I'm 29, but I was diagnosed at 28, which, if you know a lot about pancreatic cancer, it's pretty rare when younger people get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The way I was diagnosed was I was asymptomatic until about a month before my diagnosis, and my stomach swelled up with ascites, and that is peritoneal fluid. It was so bad that people asked if I was pregnant, assumed if I was pregnant, just because my stomach was so large. So I got blood work done. Blood work came back clean except for elevated white blood cells. So my general practitioner sent me to the emergency room where they did a CT, and that's where they found my tumor on my pancreas. So the emergency doctor, I remember this so clearly, came in and said, "We found a mass on your pancreas. We're 95% sure it's cancerous." And probably 10 seconds later, the interventional radiology team came, got me, and that's where I went for my first paracentesis, which is where they numb your abdomen. They stick a really big needle in there. Then they stick a catheter in there, and they have a machine that sucks out all of the fluid. Um, so that's how I got diagnosed. Kind of a wild story.
Let me just pause here for a second because this is like super. There's a lot of things here to uncover, but super young. The only symptom that you showed prior to, and I know hindsight's always 2020, and
Mhm.
just to this point in the journey, could we look back and say, hey, like 6 months before the peritonesis and the or the excuse me, the ascites showing up in the stomach and making you bloat like that, was there anything that now makes sense but didn't make sense then?
I think the only thing that really clicked for me was a few months prior to when the ascites distended my abdomen. I did start getting more stomach aches,
Yeah.
um, but that was the only thing.
But nothing like glaring, like you weren't jaundiced for a couple days. You didn't have extreme abdominal pain for like a week and then it just went away. And before you were able to get it checked out, you were just like, hey, it went away. I'll be fine. It's just, I'm getting older, but not to that degree, or you're working out or something. So just like minor stomach pain. So they do the pericentesis, I believe it's called a
Peritonesis.
peritonesis, thank you, where they removed the ascites. How much did they remove? Do you remember how much they took out that first time?
Yeah, so they took out 6 liters.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the highest, I've ever had removed, was when I was transferred up to MD Anderson Cooper Camden. That's where I
Oh,
like my official diagnosis and got my treatment plan. They removed 8 liters one time.
oh. So this first incident, you go in, you have this procedure done, they remove the 6 liters, and now where do you go from there?
Yeah, so this is also pretty crazy. So I went back into the ER. I was lucky enough to get a room in the ER, not just like the little curtain. And the ER doctor came back in and said, "We are transferring you up to MD Anderson, Cooper Camden. You're getting emergency surgery." And 2 days later, I was transferred. So they told me I needed emergency surgery, but then the plan kind of changed. They went back on that. I went to MD Anderson where I stayed for 4 days. They redid my scans. I got an endoscopy with a biopsy. That is where they confirmed that my tumor was cancerous and it was pretty large. They discharged me and then I started chemotherapy a month later.
So You go to the ER, the the exam shows tumor. ER
Mhm.
doc says, it's like 95% cancerous. You
Mhm.
get the fluid removed. They ship you up to MD Anderson in Camden,
Mhm.
which is further north, and then they do further testing there. You were under the impression of like, "Hey, probably gonna have this removed or whatever," and then you
Yeah.
get up there and, of course, they're gonna do further diagnostic testing, the EUS, and then their recommendation is to have chemotherapy
Yes.
first before any type of intervention, or what was the conversation like at that point? And also 28 years old here, like, this is probably, something that just comes out of left field, to say the least, going
Oh,
like,
for sure. When I got diagnosed, it was in June. I was getting married in October. I had a 2-week honeymoon planned in November, and I had just celebrated 3 years at a job that I absolutely loved. So this was an absolutely crazy diagnosis for me. The reason that they didn't do surgery was because after further testing, they found that it was inoperable, and the tumor was quite large. So they put me on chemotherapy to try to shrink it. And I'm very happy to say that after a year of being on chemotherapy, my tumor has shrunk in half. So we are getting positive results.
so now fast forward to where we are today, no surgery, but still on chemo, and the
Yeah.
chemo is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yes. So I am what they call maintenance chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Uh, so I get that every 2 weeks. And I also, this is kind of a out of left field. My tumor is also became cystic during the year. So that means that part of my tumor is like a honeycomb structure, and one of those honeycomb structures fills with fluid. So my abdomen no longer fills with peritoneal fluid anymore, but my tumor now fills with fluid. So I get chemo every 2 weeks, and then I go to the interventional radiology team, and I actually get my tumor drained every 2 weeks. So it's like on opposite schedule.
Wow. So you've been on chemo since this started.
Yes.
Okay. Being young, I know we've had young people on. It's not, I think it's uncommon, but it's not as uncommon, I think, that as the general public, and I'm sure you know as you nod your head. I guess what I'm indicating is like when you're in the space, like anyone is, people always say like that are not aware of the statistics, like, oh, like, I thought you had to be over 60 to get this disease. No, that's not the case. You could be 20. You could be in your teens. We've even had teens, before. So, genetics, though, we know over the last couple years has been such a big focus in this space. I'm assuming at some point genetics were done, and where are you with that? Like, is there anything genetically linked or anything there?
No, so I got genetic testing done. I got extensive genetic testing done, and everything came back negative. So when I asked the doctors who did my genetic testing, like, how did this happen? Like, because I also have no family history of pancreatic cancer.
That was
Um,
gonna be my next question.
they basically said all of your cells just lined up and mutated, and we're still kind of trying to figure out why you got it. Uh, so that was kind of in the beginning stages hard to process because then you start to go into like, well, why did I get it? Like, why me? Um, so definitely some thoughts of that.
So, no genetics, no family history of pancreatic cancer. Is there a family history of any cancer?
Some, but very, very little.
And this is an adenocarcinoma, not a neuroendocrine.
Yes.
Okay. So treatments, you've responded really well over the
Yes.
last year. The chemo is doing what it's supposed to do and shrinking the tumor. And so now, in terms of where you are today, the chemo is doing its thing. You're having the tumor drained in between the chemo treatments. What is your medical team like indicating? Is there like what direction are we looking to get more reduction before trying to go in to get surgery, or what's the plan?
Yeah, so the plan right now is that they technically call the chemo that I'm on, they refer to it as like maintenance chemo, but all of my tumor markers are trending downward like dramatically. They have dropped, responding very well to chemotherapy. The tumor drain, what had happened with the paracentesis, where the fluid was filling in my stomach, eventually it just stopped. So they're thinking if I continuously get my tumor drained, that eventually the tumor will just stop producing fluid. But my team is really happy with my progress, which is really nice to hear. They're finally all kind of like giving me compliments and everything because in the beginning it was not like that at all.
Hmm.
So it's really nice to kind of hear your team be like, I was told that I was on the upward of my battle, which was very nice to hear.
Now you mentioned something in there. You got married during
Yes.
this time, is that right?
Yeah.
So you said that happened in November. So you get diagnosed in June, and then
Mhm.
so you start treatment, and then I mean, you had the wedding scheduled, so it's gonna happen.
That was actually the first question to my oncologist. When we went in for the initial meeting, she goes over the diagnosis, goes over the plan, and the first question I asked was, I'm supposed to get married in October and go on a honeymoon in November. Can I still do that? And I remember her looking at me and said, well, I'm going to kick your butt if you don't get married and go on your honeymoon. So I ended up getting chemo like the week before I got married. Same thing with on my honeymoon. I ended up getting chemo right before the honeymoon. And I think looking back, it just made those moments. Of course, your wedding and your honeymoon are always going to be special. But I think it made it even more special for myself, my family, my husband, and everyone who was invited, knowing how much it took for us to get to that place. Because when I was first being diagnosed, they gave me months. They didn't think it was going to be so good. So getting to that point just made it even more special.
Can't even imagine. That must have been pretty special to say the least. Especially giving the time frame of this, like, you get diagnosed in June, and then weddings and honeymoons, those are all like really, really amazing things and happy moments, and some things that, people look forward for years, right? I mean, some
Hmm.
people their whole life because that's what they envision life being, but no one ever envisions like getting a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer before you get married. So that roller coaster of emotions must have been insane for you in terms of kind of managing and juggling all that during that time frame.
Yes. So lots of emotions. I've always been very in tune with my emotions. And when I talk to other cancer patients, I always tell them, feel your emotions. Sometimes I think that when you get a cancer diagnosis, yourself or your friends or your family can fall into something called toxic positivity, where everyone's like, you're going to beat this. It's going to be fine. You're going to survive. And I think that can be pretty damaging to a cancer patient because they feel the weight of constantly having to be positive. So whenever I talk to other cancer patients, I tell them, you're going to feel sad. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel lonely. You're going to feel isolated. Um, but just be in tune with those emotions and know that it is okay to feel that way. You don't always have to be positive.
That's interesting. I don't know if I mean I'm sure the topic has come up, but it's something that is that I want to spend a couple minutes on this,
Yeah.
like this toxic positivity. I guess where this may come up on our end, like that I see it, and this is a question that we'll ask, and maybe we'll ask this later on, but like a lot of times people will call us, and I'm not trying to make excuses here before we go down this
Mhm.
road with people. I think the one thing I will say is, and how it comes up, let me finish what I was saying here. Like people call us and say, "Hey, my neighbor or my relative, whoever, someone that they're really close to just got diagnosed. What's like the best thing I can do for them?" And we've always heard from patients is like just be normal, right? Like don't have
Yeah.
to like take me to Disney World or try to come over and, try to talk about something that they don't want to talk about. Just the normalcy, whether it's sports or kids or work or whatever it may be, right? And I wonder if the toxic positivity and this is where we're really fascinated, and something that I love this podcast for being is like we were saying before, like I don't know your story, and this is kind of like we're meeting for I'm hearing this for the first time, and so this is like where these conversations go, Kellyanne, right? Like
Yeah.
I wonder if this toxic positivity is a byproduct. I know people, there's a lot of, and this is true, but I think some of this stuff is like overcooked in the oven, where like you got to have a mental mindset. Like your mind can do amazing things, and you have to have this mental mindset that's like positive, right? But here's the but. Everybody knows, I think, I've never fought cancer, but I think everybody who's fighting cancer knows the reality of it.
Mhm.
They don't need to be reminded of it, but I think there's so much noise, I guess is that's not a good term, but there's so much out there in this arena of, hey, it's got to be positive. You got to be positive because you can't let those negative thoughts creep in because if that creeps in, then like the bad happens, right? Or you manifest like certain things, right? And then there's so much of that, so there's so much of that saying, hey, it's got to be positive. It's got to be positive. It's almost like it's not necessarily genuine,
Yes.
that toxicity of positivity, right? Like it's like this the positivity that's not genuine, but people show up and say this to patients, but they don't necessarily believe that. That's not what patients need, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there was a lot of moments, and there's still a lot of moments in my cancer journey where am faced with kind of this toxic positivity, and I sometimes just want to scream because I'm just like, I just want to be sad for a day. I'm not going to be sad forever, but today I would just like to be sad, or today I would just like to be angry. And I think what people could offer instead of that toxic positivity is statements like, I'm here if you'd like to talk, or I'm here if you'd like to listen, or is there anything on your mind that you would like to just share? And I found for myself that when I would talk to people, I wasn't necessarily looking for solutions or advice. I just wanted to say how I felt in that moment, and I just wanted to get it all off of my chest. And I think that was really helpful when people did that for me.
What did you do for work?
I was an environmental educator. So I worked for a nonprofit and I would teach kids about the wetlands and all of the animals who live there.
Have you, in this journey or any time before, done any therapy?
Yes. So I was in therapy before my diagnosis for a general anxiety disorder. And then when things got bad, I would say I was not doing well mentally. A couple months after my diagnosis, I got a therapist who is a cancer forward therapist, and I'm still with her today. And I see her about every 2 weeks.
And that has helped.
Oh, it has helped tremendously because you have a person who is not biased, doesn't really know your friends or family, just knows what you're telling them. And my therapist is very good at just listening to the things that I have to say, very good at offering like different ways to view things. And she's actually the person who introduced me to toxic positivity when I was complaining about people just being too happy.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why I bring this up, so like I asked about your job because I'm thinking, all right, maybe again, just from experience here, just and not to like stay on this point, but there's a lot of things I say, and this is like a golden moment that we have on a lot of podcasts, and this toxic positivity is like I think very important. That's why we're spending a little bit of time here, and just the questions. I do think from my experience, like we do go through things in life that we don't necessarily understand until they happen, and possibly that's through work or life experiences. Therapy is something um, that we talk about often. I know it's like a really like for some people it's really taboo and being a first generation Italian, like my dad going back, like I just remember like when my dad was going through his journey, like they brought a therapist down and it was like extracting like teeth, like my dad would probably give up a tooth before talking to the therapist, right? He was just that was like how he was. That was that generation. But I think as we evolve and as we grow and as we understand therapy is a very important piece, I think, to anyone's cancer journey, regardless of the cancer, but in particular, we've seen it here on the podcast and in pancreatic cancer. So I think that's just like really, really powerful what you just said. Lining it in with the toxic positivity, but also, we talk a lot about support. And not everyone does this alone. You have your husband. I'm sure there's other family members, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but that therapist is part of that support system,
Mhm.
to help you through this journey. And a lot of centers offer this. Not to say that people have to go out and find therapists or certain pieces of that team, but like that I think that's just really important. And sometimes there's I think in the past there's been a real big stigma about finding therapists or dealing with therapists, and maybe it's a vulnerability thing too, I would imagine for some people, like they just in the control aspect. But at the end of the day, like you got to worry about what you can control and staying in that lane, right? And if you can control those emotions and how you react and how someone says something, but like it's toxic positivity, then not to spend time there. But that's just so powerful. So I really appreciate the honesty there, Kellyanne. Talk a little bit about, I know I have a note here. I know it's been a little bit over a year.
Mhm.
But, let me say this, you have a very calming way of talking about this. Most people who are 28 years old are focused elsewhere. Um, Calming in the sense like, "Hey, this is, a big issue, stage 4, 24, June of 24, marriage," but it was very calming. How are you able to process it? And maybe this is just for the podcast, which is fine. I mean, this is we wanna be real here and not be fake or make anything up. Have you found strategies to process all this mentally that have allowed you to kinda get through this? Is it a team approach with the therapist, with your husband, I would imagine?
Yeah, so I will admit that it was not always like this. I had a really dark month where I was really going through it with side effects from chemotherapy. I was upset, I was angry, I didn't want to talk to anyone. And I think finally just getting to the point where I could sit myself down. Since being in therapy for years, I tend to be very self aware. So one day I sat myself down and I saw how much I was hurting my husband, I was hurting my parents, I was hurting my friends. And I said, okay, things need to change. We need to do something. So that's when I reached out to my therapist. But my cancer journey, and I will say this, um, For most cancer patients that I talk to, it is not a linear journey. It is very up and down. So at the beginning of my journey, I was like, disassociating. I was like, this is not happening to me. This is not my life. Then we went downhill very quickly when I realized it was my life. And now I feel like after a year, I have my emotions in check. I have a great support system with my friends and family. My therapist has helped me so much. So I've come to terms with acceptance. Also, joining Facebook pages and commenting on Instagram videos, and kind of using social media as well has really helped me. So I do little videos educating people about my cancer on my Facebook, and I am very open about my cancer journey. And I have found that that's very therapeutic for me.
Do you ever find, and not, this is just related to social media, I think where we are like now, do you post and ghost, or do you kind of find like you find times where you can stay on there and then have to get off? Because we've heard some stuff here on the podcast, like some of the groups, some of the pancreatic cancer groups can be very,
Yeah.
they could be doom and gloom.
Yeah. Yes, and when I was first trying to find support pages, that's what I found was just all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But I did research and I found a couple Facebook pages that were, more focused on survival, more focused on, positive stories, good stories, treatments working, people working together. And I also found that just sharing my cancer journey helped me because I felt like I was educating my audience on, if someone they knew was diagnosed with cancer, like, hey, here's some things that are very helpful to cancer patients. And I've received very positive feedback doing these little videos and kind of posting. All of my posts are not positive. I've definitely posted on my Facebook and my Instagram of like, hey, I'm going through it right now. I'm having some dark thoughts, and that's the reality of my cancer journey. And I just wanted to share them with you. And even kind of those more dark, kind of negative posts, people still respond very well to because I think it gives them an inside look of what is actually going on during a cancer patient's journey.
That's awesome. I think there's, something that you said, and something that I mentioned, like, there's that vulnerability. I think when people become vulnerable, I think then, that's pretty genuine in most cases, the audience, reacting in a positive way. And then I think that the thing you mentioned, acceptance, I know that's a topic that we talk about a lot on the podcast, especially with survivors, and I would have to say when people have acceptance, I think the quality of life for them kinda goes in an opposite direction that possibly it was before, in terms of in a positive way for quality, because they have acceptance and they can move on and they can kinda, I think, see things in a different manner and come up with solutions that are positive for what's going on in their daily lives, with that challenge.
Yeah, it's like I've finally made peace with it. Like
Yeah.
I peace of my at peace with my diagnosis, how everything's going, and it's just keep moving forward.
Would you say with that, given your experience, that that allows you, because I wanna just take a moment here to talk about acceptance, that allows you to focus on what's important by having that acceptance so that you can not necessarily in the back of your mind say, "God damn, like, what did I do? Why did I get this?" And occupying time mentally or physically trying to figure that out and now just move forward and kind of like focus on, all right, like what's the next step? Like how do we move the goalpost? How do we get closer to that goalpost of defeat here?
Yeah, I would definitely say, coming to terms with just accepting and being at peace with my diagnosis has helped kind of keep those thoughts out of my head. I still have them
Yep.
sometimes, which is totally okay. But I think that I really, um, pay attention more and appreciate more things that are happening in my life and my friends and my family, and just being able to go out and do stuff and hang out with my friends and family because I know that not all cancer patients are at that point. So I'm very thankful that I am at that point.
You mentioned friends and family, and I know I mentioned this earlier on. What's the support been like from your friends and family during this journey?
Yeah, they have been absolutely amazing. My mom actually, when I was diagnosed, went into therapy, and her therapist is a cancer survivor and also a mom. So that really, really helped our relationship. And that really helped her being able to, when I am having those bad days or when I am having those feelings, she really knows what to say, what to do. My friends are so great in validating me. Um, they really acknowledge and appreciate how much energy it takes for me to, like get out of bed, like get dressed, put on makeup, like show up to places. And I think that having friends and family who acknowledge that and just appreciate that you can still hang out with them and you're still making an effort, it's been great. Same with my husband and his family as well.
Are your mom and dad local
Oh,
as
yeah. Yeah, they are local.
everybody's in that area? That's awesome. What, not to put anyone on the spot, but I know I asked this before about the questions we get. So the question to you is, has there been something for those folks listening or watching that, maybe their neighbor just got diagnosed or someone in their family? What's been kind of like the best thing that someone has done for you? And you don't have to mention a name, you can keep it anonymous, that kind of like really mean has meant a lot, during this time, for what you're going through?
That's a great question. I think for me, um, having people that have supported me through my entire journey. So, in the beginning, you experience kind of the flood of like presents, people reaching out, people asking how they can help. And it can be very, very overwhelming because you're also dealing with a diagnosis and your treatment plan. So, I think what really has meant the most to me is the people that have stayed with me, continuously checked on me, continuously hung out with me um, throughout, this year of my cancer journey.
Really special. A couple questions left here, and then we're gonna share with our audience where people could connect with you, if they're going through a very similar diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And the next couple questions I always say are loaded, so there's no right or wrong to it. Loaded in the sense that they are thought provoking. So don't be taken back here, Kellyanne. Given what you've gone through, given your experience, what is some advice that you would give? Like, hey, I'm calling, I'm reaching out, I just got diagnosed. Again, given what you've gone through, what are some things that you would say, like, hey, definitely write these down and, maybe take them to heart, like actually follow up with them and come up with? So, what would those couple things be?
Yeah, definitely finding a good support system would be number one. Um, Also, kind of coming to terms with your experience is going to be linear, like I mentioned. So you're not going to get not diagnosed, um, go through chemo, everything's great, you're feeling great, everything's positive, and then you're in remission. It's very up and down. So just knowing that it's a roller coaster and that's okay, and just being really in tune with your emotions. I would also say that trying to find support groups on Facebook or Instagram or even websites I found a couple websites that actually put me in touch with pancreatic cancer survivors, and we would text about treatment and we would check up on each other. So just finding people in similar situations, because those people, I'll never say that, a cancer patient knows exactly what another cancer patient is going through, because everyone's cancer journey is very personal to them. But having people in your life who maybe know how the side effects feel, maybe know how scary a diagnosis is, was very, very helpful for me.
It's powerful stuff. My last question here, and this is the loaded of loaded questions. Given your experience, how do you define the term pancreatic cancer? What's your definition of it?
Ooh, that's a good one. That is thought provoking. I would say that at first, it is a very well, all cancer is scary, but pancreatic cancer is very scary. But once you decide that you are going to fight and you come to acceptance and peace with it, I think that it can be very powerful in a way, because you get to educate people, you get to meet other survivors, and you get to make those connections. I know in a lot of my Facebook groups, they always say, never ever give up. And I think that's what I would define pancreatic cancer as: never ever give up.
Powerful stuff. Kellyanne, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to learn about your story with pancreatic cancer. If our audience listening and watching, if someone just got diagnosed and in similar age, maybe similar situation, where's the best place? I know you've mentioned a couple things: Facebook, Instagram. Where do we want to point people to connect with you?
Yeah, so if you go on Facebook, and just search Kellyanne Field, my Facebook will pop up, and you can find me on there. You don't necessarily have to be my friend to see all of my cancer posts. So I do make all of my cancer posts public. So if you just wanted to browse my page, you can see all of those posts. And my Instagram, I believe, is Kellyanne Field 9, all lowercase.
I'm gonna look you up right now on Instagram. I don't have in my way of eliminating social on my phone, I do not have the Facebook app anymore on my phone. So let's just see here. It would help if I spell it the field like Kelly Ann. You said Kelly Ann Field 9
Yes, that's what it should be. And it is a public profile. So again, you don't have to follow me to see my posts.
is the last name like Field Field?
Yes.
Let's see here. Oh, and you know why? Because I'm not spelling it the proper way. Kellyanne. There we go. So my fault here, Kellyanne. Make sure we'll make a note here. So Kellyanne is Kelianne. That's how you want to spell it, not Kelly, the Americanized way.
Yeah.
Kelly. That is wrong. So yes. So here we go. We're hitting follow. So here we are. There's a great picture here with you and a large cow on June 8th. Wow. The best experience, it says. Where was that?
Um,
Little Hoves, oh, no,
little
Hooves Farm.
so it's actually up in Avalon. It's a little campground called Ponderosa Campground, and you make a donation to the animals, and then you get to go meet all of their animals and feed them.
So cool. I'm a big animal guy. And here you are getting your port access for chemo. So you do share quite a bit here. So awesome. I love it. I'm not as active on social, but I just followed you on Instagram. So this is great. Kellyanne, thank you so much for being a
Yeah.
guest on the Project Purple podcast. It's been an honor to share your story.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was an awesome experience for me.
Thank you for listening and watching to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you liked today's episode, feel free to share this episode and make sure to follow the Project Purple podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a wrap of this episode. And until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening.